Wind and Truth. Every time I do that, the books are bigger and they hurt more. But do not worry, these are always very controlled, and I would never unintentionally damage my collection. Love you, book. It is finally time to talk about Wind and Truth, the 5th book in Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight archive. One of the most popular and influential series of the modern fantasy era. I first read this series throughout 2023, and I documented my findings here. This is a series I've really loved, and it's by far the highlight of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere for me. And Wind and Truth was very exciting because not only was it the first Stormlight book since I've read them all, but because this was presented as the finale to the first arc of the series, which was, going to be divided into 2. Everything we have seen up to this point, this baby was meant to be the climax of it all. It wasn't. That was a goddamn lie, but we'll get into that later. As all the other books do, this one picks up again on the night of King Gavilar's murder. This is for sure one of the most interesting chapters set on this night, because, now, well, it's kind of done. So much of it was shrouded in mystery, but it's kind of all cracked open for us now, so that's cool. I guess after this he'll have to pick another night to spend 15 years writing about. From there, of course, the book picks up where Rhythm of War ended off, and now this is not going to be a spoiler video, except for at the end when I will have a spoiler section. But I am going to talk a bit about the synopsis, so use your own discretion there. Of course, at the end of Rhythm and War, we saw Dalinar and the evil spooky god Odium make a deal, sign a contract to settle their differences by hosting a contest of champions. What does this contest entail? We don't really know yet. But what we do know is that something fishy is going on, because due to, of course, events we know that happened in Rhythm of War, Odium's plan seems to have changed, and he is now capitalizing on a bunch of loopholes in the contract to cause a bit of mischief before the fateful day. You see, one of the contract loopholes involves, the countries and the borders of the world, so Odium's forces are attempting to take as much land on Roshar as they possibly can before the deadline. And Dalinar can't help with that. No, him and Navani, they're off on their little adventure for the book, trying to learn more about Odium and how they can actually defeat him. Because the odds of a lowly Knight Radiant defeating a god, not so great. Kaladin can't really help either. He's also off doing his own thing. And I'm not going to say what that thing is, but we'll say he takes on a much different role in this book than previous ones. Of course, his character arc is kind of over after Rhythm of War, so we're sort of seeing him take what he has learned and apply it to something else in a way we haven't seen before. Shallan also can't help because she is continuing along with her Ghostblood quest line. So that kind of just leaves Adolin and Sigzil to hold the borders. So I hope they do a good job. And as always, the flashback portions of this book are focused on one character, and this time, of course, the man that started it all.
Zeth, Sun Balano, Truthless of Shinovar.
We finally get to learn more about him, and we certainly do. What's interesting about Wind and Truth right from the start is that this has a very different structure from all of the other Stormlight books. Instead of a 5-act story, this one is told in 10. Each one, of course, taking place on the days before the Contest of Champions. So we essentially have this giant countdown clock. So for each day, we will check in on most of our characters to see what they're up to, see if they make any progress, and then by the end we can freak out because, oh my god, another day is gone. I love this change for Wind and Truth. I thought it was so smart for a number of reasons. Having this giant countdown, this constant reminder of how close they are to the fateful contest, really gives the book this greater sense of urgency. And because there are so many multiple parts and so many different plot lines going on that have to fit into each of these parts, I found remarkably this to be the fastest paced Stormlight book. Which is not a thing I thought I would be saying, considering this is also the longest Stormlight book. By quite a bit. 1,330 pages. That's the limit. Books do not get much longer than that. But I truly did not feel it, which is insane to me because I would consider this, a slow burn series. None of these books are particularly speedy, and this one might not really be either, but it feels much quicker. Of course, the stakes are as high as they've ever been. Everything's just jumping around so often. Yeah, I was just kind of locked in, and it also helped that most of the content here was also pretty fire. This was a Stormlight book. It's what I expected. It's kind of what I got. Most of the plot lines that make up this book I found to continue the series trend of being awesome, being very engaging. At this point, I'm just so into it. I love all the characters so much. I'm just having a ball. This shit's awesome. This book is full of crazy action. It's got all the classic twists and reveals you would expect from the Stormlight Archive. In addition to the normal backstory chapters we're getting, there is a lot of insight into the history of Roshar in this one. Stormlight has always had some of my favorite world building ever, and as a fan of that, I absolutely loved getting more detail on its history. We get some very fascinating perspectives, a lot of big reveals, things finally making sense after all this time. If you're not into that as much as you are the stuff in the present, honestly, you might find some parts of this one to be quite boring, but I ate that shit up, okay? I love that stuff, and this book absolutely delivered in that aspect. Also delivered on one of its biggest selling points, the Szeth backstory. Holy mother of God! Szeth has always been one of my favorite characters, but there has never really been a ton of him. There's more Szeth than I could have ever wanted in this one, man. His backstory is predictably tragic. It kind of had to be, but it hit so hard. It worked so well, giving us an insight into, how Szeth became as damaged as he is. And I really like how his backstory was working with what was happening in the present. A lot of very interesting things coming together at the end. Really, really solid stuff. The surprising, unexpected goat of this book is kind of Adolin. Adolin, I've always, liked Adolin, but, in this one, he's more of a main character than he's ever been, and his whole storyline was fantastic. And it doesn't really involve Shallan at all, so if you weren't, a fan of them being all lovey-dovey all the time, yeah, you don't have to worry there. I enjoyed Sigzil's stuff a lot, gave us a lot of insight into things that, trying to avoid spoilers, we may or may not know about him. Hoid has a much bigger role in this than he does in pretty much any other Cosmere story, and thank God, finally, bro is actively helping our main cast. What? Love it, though. I love Hoid. I think he's such a cool character, and we still don't really know a ton about him, but I'll take every sliver I can get, man. And I have always been an enjoyer of Shallan's Ghostblood infiltration plotline. I was very invested in it here, and very interested in the directions it took. And it will be very interesting to see how the Ghostblood stuff continues into Mistborn. And that brings me to an interesting talking point. When discussing the Cosmere, a lot of people, make their reading lists and their recommendations on what you need to read before what, and I see a lot of people growing increasingly concerned that the farther it goes, the more they'll have to be caught up, especially in regards to Wind and Truth. I've seen people say that you need to read everything to get the most out of Wind and Truth, and I disagree, completely. I think the Stormlight Archive, as these 5 books, can easily be read and enjoyed on their own. Are there lots of Easter eggs and references and connections to the other Cosmere works? Yes, absolutely. But Sanderson's really smart about including them. He makes his allusions, does his little tricks, changes a few names, to the point where if you have not read other stuff in the Cosmere, you probably won't even recognize these things as Easter eggs. And that's something I think a lot of people don't really take into account. I'll be reading this and I'll be like, oh, that's a Warbreaker reference, a Mistborn reference, Elantras, woo! And people take that and are like, oh my god, there's so many connections here, you gotta read everything to understand it all. But if you haven't read all of those things, all this stuff's just kind of going over your head. And yes, it is nice to have read all these things, but I do not think you need to at all. Will that be true as the series moves into the future? Probably not. But for now, I don't think there are really any mandatory prerequisites. That's a hard word to say, prerequisite. Of course, all of this culminates in the gigantic, explosive, climactic finale, Stormlight Archive's first arc. And it's a Stormlight book, so yeah, that's pretty much exactly what you get. As I alluded to at the very beginning of this video, I don't really get it. I don't get the whole first arc thing. This isn't the ending of anything. This is a middle book, man. This is the ultimate middle book. Are there character arcs and plot lines that are resolved? Yes. Are most of them? No. Yeah, I don't know really what happened here. There seems to have been this big disconnect. Like, I think when Sanderson was talking about the final arc, like, he just had something else in mind from what everyone else was thinking about. I was really expecting, like, the ending of a Mistborn era type ending with this one. And no, it's like the ending of the Bands of Mourning. This ending is definitely a huge turning point in the series. You know, so much insane stuff happens, but it sets up more than it resolves. Now, I don't really have an issue with that, really. I'm just a bit confused as to why the whole book was, like, marketed as a finale. And that brings me to a few issues I have with this book. Like A Rhythm of War, it's one that, you know, most of the elements I really, really love, but there are a couple of things that keep it back from me calling this, you know, one of the best Cosmere books. I've given a lot of praise to the structure of this book and its 10 parts, but there is a bit of a caveat when it comes to that. You see, Sanderson has a very, I don't really know what to say, it's almost like a movie-style approach to a lot of his books, where instead of spending like a large time with one specific character and, you know, seeing their entire thing play out, we are constantly jumping around to every other character because all of these events are happening at the same time. Now, I think that's fine. I think it works exceptionally well in some of his smaller books. It has worked well with Stormlight in the past. But the thing about Wind and Truth is at this point, we have like 30 POV characters or something. So many important characters here with important things going on. And so it got kind of annoying when this book was just constantly jumping around. And not necessarily in a way that felt cohesive. I felt this the worst during the climax of the book, where we'd be following one character and they do this like massive crazy thing and you're like, oh my god, what a twist, oh my... And then it just cuts to another character and I'm like, wait, no, go back. And then that character will do some crazy thing and there'll be this big twist and I'm like, oh my god. And then it would jump to another character. I'm like, no, go back. It just got kind of annoying when like all of these big moments were being interrupted by other big moments. And all of the big moments were awesome, but I don't know if this structure was the best way to do it. There's a book I read recently there, The Shadow Rising, Robert Jordan. Obviously a big influence on Sanderson. That was a book that had a lot of different crazy climaxes, but they sort of all played out like in full before moving on to the next one. It would have been hard to do for Wind and Truth because it's like all happening at the same time, but I don't know, man. Just something about the insane amount of characters, it was just kind of got a bit exhausting. And that brings me to another point with the length of the book. Obviously I said that, you know, this was the fastest paced Stormlight book for me. I don't know if it will be for everyone, but it is still extremely long. And does the book justify its length? You see, I never have an issue with Sanderson's prose. That's why I never really talk about it. I know it's like the big criticism people have of him, but I'm of the opinion it works. It's very simple. I have no issues with it. The stories are good. Let's go. And when it comes to his shorter books, he's usually very tight, very concise. But despite me not having an issue with the length at all, and I do want to say, like, I was like flying through this. I was loving it. But realistically, this could have been a lot shorter. There's a lot of kind of just rambling. We always know what the characters are feeling at any given time, and a lot of the times it's the same stuff. And again, I'm loving it. I'm like, oh my god, Zeth is sad. This is crazy, man. Give me more. But we know Zeth is sad. You probably could have cut that one out. Maybe save a couple trees. But the only time it kind of hindered something for me personally was, you know, when we get into the discussions of mental health here. Now, mental health has always been a big thing with Stormlight, and it's something I appreciate Sanderson greatly for. As someone who has dealt with some of the issues that the characters in these books have had, I've always found it to be very well done and very satisfying as characters overcome some hurdles. And this book is kind of just like, you have a mental illness. This is what is wrong with you. This is what you need to do to fix it. And I'm like, good, but also it's a bit much. I understand what's happening here. I appreciate it, but also calm down. I loved this book. I thought it was super engaging, super thrilling, and all of my problems are very minor that didn't really hinder my enjoyment. I am of the same opinion as Rhythm of War, honestly. This could have been the best Stormlight Archive book. I absolutely love a lot of what happens here. It just could have been a bit tighter. It could have been a bit more cohesive with its, 30 plot lines going on. And I really hope that this upcoming long hiatus Sanderson is taking from the series will get things back to, still being gigantic and massive, but a little more tighter, a little more like, The Way of Kings. That being said, as a Stormlight fan, this book was very satisfying. It gave me things I wanted to see. Definitely left me wanting more, and I'm a bit rotted at that notion. So yeah, that's that. Well, you want to hear about spoilers? You want to hear what I thought of the toddler? Alright, you know the drill. Get out of here. I was so confused why that goddamn baby was there the whole time. I'm like, why are we focusing so much on this baby? He's a literal baby. Obviously, I was expecting Sanderson to do stuff with Gavinor, but mostly in the second arc of the story. Wasn't expecting what he did with him here. And, what happens with Gavinor at the Contest of Champions was traumatizing, honestly. What were you thinking, Brandon? That's so messed up. He's a baby. He was a baby, because Odium Taravangian kind of kidnaps him, puts him in a time bubble for 20 years, and raises him to hate his grandfather. Not so. I had no idea what was going to happen at the Contest of Champions going into it, but that was certainly not on my mind. Mother of God. I've been calling Dalinar's death, forever. But it still kind of hit me like a truck. I wasn't really ready for it, especially with all the Gavinor stuff that was happening. I'm like, oh my god, this is happening right now, and you're still going to kill Dalinar. Of course, Dalinar does die. But where I had it in my mind that this was the end of an arc, I also thought that Odium would somehow be defeated. No! I won't say where, but we have seen this happen in the Cosmere before, where one host takes on two shards, combines them. That's what happens here. Taravangian absorbs the Honor Shard. It combines with Odium, and he becomes Retribution. He is now, the ultimate god of Roshar, and all of our characters are boned. End of an arc. My ass. I mean, Dalinar's arc, sure, he's off in heaven now, chilling with whoever. I don't think I'm alone in saying I don't like how Taravangian still managed to get an evil Dalinar. He just, poked into, the memory Shadesmar or whatever and was like, aha, evil Dalinar, I'm just gonna pluck you out here, and now you can work for me. What the hell was that, man? I'm sure Brandon has a plan for this, and it will make sense later. I just don't think it should have been here. Right after Dalinar died, Taravangian's wait, no, Dalinar, he's going to heaven. No, I can't let that happen. It's just kind of weird. The whole ending I thought was fantastic, but that one part, and Hoyd was freaking out too. This is easily the most panic we've ever seen him. And things are bad because he's usually chill the whole time. But after he escapes Taravangian, he's like, alright, well, Roshar, they can just be there for a bit. I got stuff to do on Scadrial. Shallan contacts the leader of the Ghostbloods. People more well-read, like myself, may know who that is. Ooh. And he's like, yeah, sorry, Roshar can go do that thing. We gotta do stuff on Scadrial. And it was weird, because I'm like, okay, everyone's hopping over to Mistborn now. That's more important, I guess. And it's really funny, I think, how they justify this. But, the whole time I was reading, I'm like, this takes place around the same time as Mistborn Era 2. And Mistborn Era 3 will take 50 years after that, so during Mistborn Era 3, will that take place after the Stormlight Archive Part 2? No! Basically, when Retribution was created, it caused a bunch of weird orbital stuff to happen to Roshar, and it is now in a time dilation bubble where time is moving super slowly on Roshar. I think this worked, it made sense in the way it was explained. I just think it's really funny that that's how they justify all this advancement happening on Scadrial, while Roshar is just kinda stuck. Kaladin's also a herald now. Good for him. Like I said in my review, I thought it was a bit sometimes obnoxious when he was, doing his whole therapy thing. He's like, you're sick, you're mentally ill, I know how to help you. We get it, okay? But I do think this was genuinely a great place to take his character, and I'm really excited to see what happens there. Also, I kind of like Lift now. Yeah, how about that? I mean, I kind of predicted it, but I find Lift to have matured just a little bit to the point where she's not so annoying and obnoxious, and I kind of just see her as, you know, a little goofy. And I think in the second half of the series, she's definitely going to be playing we know she's playing a bigger role. And I think that may be tied to helping out Gavinor, because Mother of God, that guy is going to have some issues, and I don't know if Kaladin's going to be around to therapy him. And side note, I thought it was really funny when Kaladin was, you know, giving Zeth therapy, and Zeth's like, oh, I finally realized what's wrong, I know what I must do, and Kaladin's like, my friend, I'm so proud of you, and Zeth's like, yeah, I gotta kill myself. Anyway, yeah, good book. I enjoyed it. You know, you could talk for hours about this thing because it's so goddamn long. I'm not the Shardcast. I'm not going to do that. I got places to be. I got other books to read. Next up, we're doing Age of Madness over here, so you look forward to that. Thank you all for watching. Leave your thoughts on anything Stormlight, Cosmere related down in the comments below. And until then, friends, journey before destination or something. I don't know.